Iran will not close the Strait of Hormuz, at least not entirely. And in fact, the United States may indeed be the ones to close the Strait of Hormuz, at least partially. Now, you're not going to hear this anywhere else except here on Green Griggs. I'm going to give you the analysis, the numbers, the means, the motive, all of that in the course of this video. And this is first aired analysis of this on YouTube. Anywhere in the news media, you're not going to find anywhere else right now except for here. So buckle up. We're going to go in depth on this. We're going to go through the numbers. We're going to talk about it and explain it. And it's got a lot to do with means and motive and who funds who. So for starters, oh yeah, if you're not subscribed, subscribe, bang the notification bell, and click off. For starters, guys, here's the deal. Iran's government has been funded in large degree by China. Yes, China has propped up the regime of ayatollahs that rule Iran. The government there is not popular among its citizenry and was subject to being in grave trouble, but it has been propped up by China. And it just so happens that China gets 45% of their petroleum, their needs, when China is a very energy thirsty nation, they get it from no less than through the Strait of Hormuz. Lots of it comes from Iran. The energy that China needs, 45% of it, even though they get a lot from Russia, they only get 45% of it through the Strait of Hormuz. We're going to go through all this, guys, but that is very significant. And so for Iran to close the Strait of Hormuz would be like biting the hand that feeds them. Now, what they might do is like the Houthis do. And maybe this is a preview. Just like the Houthis are cutting down trade going through the Red Sea, Iran may selectively take out ships that aren't in front of them, that are maybe non-Chinese, especially U.S. and Israeli connected ships that go through, or Saudi Arabian ships that go through the Strait of Hormuz. But Saudi Arabia and the United Arab Emirates have a way out. And so does Iran a little bit. We'll talk about all that. So, it gets complicated. Yet, as we get into a war with Iran, the United States may also find itself at war with China. And the United States may be keenly interested in cutting off China's energy reserves. So I'm going to go through the numbers. We're going to look at some maps and just bear all this out. So once again, to top it off, now, if the Strait of Hormuz is closed, or any portion of it, it could be catastrophic to the global economy. And yeah, even if the Iranians pull Houthi maneuver with the Strait of Hormuz, that also would be catastrophic to the economy. So I'm not going to say nothing's going to happen in your wallet, but it's not going to be affected. I'm just saying the complete closure, what everybody talks about, ain't likely to happen. So, just to go to the basics here. The estimates vary from source to source, but basically around 21% of the world's petroleum liquids flow through the Strait of Hormuz. And that translates to about 21 million barrels per day as of 2020. Now, some of the data I had to go to different sources to get a lot of this data. So some of it will be 2020, some will be 2023. You'll get, and some of this data varies a little bit. So it don't all add up exactly. Like some sources like India change what they buy from Russia, what goes through the Strait of Hormuz. So there's some variability within these numbers around the margins. So it may not add up within 2 or 3%, but basically at the large scale, this is what we're looking at. Okay, so what you need to know is that Russia actually accounts for about 10% of the world's total oil production. And a lot of that is going to China. Some of it goes to India. The United States is also a leading contributor to energy production. We had, as of about 2022, production of about 14.7% of the world's crude oil at about, and as of about 2023, though, that was about 12.933 million barrels per day. Now, see, there's already variance in those numbers because the percentages are almost how many million barrels per day. It's pretty close. I mean, the world's consuming about 100 million barrels per day. So that's kind of interesting. It suggests that the United States oil production is dropping. I've not researched that part, but with the current administration in the White House, they have been putting the squeeze on the oil industry. So that's no surprise. Under a certain previous administration, the United States was actually not only energy independent, but we were a net exporter. Not exactly true right now. Anyway, so according to the numbers, and I'm going to give you those numbers. So for those that want to argue that point, I got numbers, and a lot of these numbers come from the U.S. government, like the U.S. Energy Information Administration. That's a primary source of the numbers that I'll be dishing out here tonight. Okay, but through different sources, it's not all got the same time tags on, unfortunately. So bear with me here. So in 2018, U.S. to just give you an example, show you where the United States stands. In 2018, U.S. imported about 1.4 millions of oil per day, crude oil and condensate through Persian Gulf countries, which is a small percentage of what we use. So I think it's like 7%. And overall, in 2022, the U.S. consumed about 20.01 million barrels per day. So we're using a little bit more. We're not producing as much. So that gives you, it shows that we do have an energy deficit between what we're producing right now and what we're consuming, but we're bringing it from other places. So, and yeah, we got to, like I said, we got to out on some of this too. I'll mention what Saudi Arabia and United Arab Emirates has available to them. Just to show you, if we do close the Strait of Hormuz, how's the impact the United States and its allies? That's where I'm coming from right now. In case we close the Strait of Hormuz due to a war with China. China's taking 45% of their energy through the Strait of Hormuz. That's very significant. If China gets shut down to that degree, it's going to hurt them really bad. And we're going to go into that in a little bit more detail. So we'll go through the math. Just bear with me as I'm painting out the broader picture here. But, these estimates vary. I've seen from 67 to 82% from different sources. So, and it could be because of the variability of how India's buying their oil, whether they're getting it from Russia or they're getting it from the Mideast. And that has changed quite a bit, up and down, seesawed a bit in the last few years, especially since the conflict over in Europe started. But in any event, it's like the 67 to 82% of the petroleum produced out through the Persian Gulf that goes through the Strait of Hormuz has been destined to Asian countries. But that includes some of our allies. Japan receives anywhere between 20 to 30% of their petroleum through the Strait of Hormuz, and about 10 to 15% goes to South Korea. Australia is fairly immune to this. They're basically a net energy exporter. They have limited reliance on crude through the Strait of Hormuz, mainly because they are actually an exporter of liquid natural gas. Now, liquid natural gas is the petrol you put in your cars to drive around. But Australia's done pretty well. By the way, you could convert your vehicles to liquid natural gas too. So now Australia does import some crude and some refined products like gasoline, but Australia's looking pretty good. So, we got the Alaska pipeline. Surely we can handle a lot of our allies' needs with the Alaska pipeline. Well, actually, the Alaska pipeline produces today about 480 to 500,000 barrels per day, about 500,000. So it comes in quite short of what our allies use today. And it's, some people think China's buying all the oil from the pipeline. That's not true either, because China only buys about half that from the United States. I'll go more into that. So, but now in about 1988, the Trans-Alaska Pipeline actually was producing about 2.1 million barrels per day, according to Alaska, the pipeline service company from Alaska. So Alaska, that's the name of that company. So also bear in mind that the reason for the difference there is because the fields up there on the North Shore just aren't as productive as they used to be. They're drawing them down, guys. There's other fields up in that Northwest Petroleum Preserve, or the Naval Oil Preserves used to be called, which the current administration has made off limits. And it's thought they have more petroleum than anything else, but they're off limits. You can't touch that. Anyway, and we might get a little bit too much plant food up in the atmosphere. So, yeah. But now, Saudi Arabia and United Arab Emirates have operating pipelines that bypass the Strait of Hormuz. The Saudi Arabian pipelines can transmit up to 7 million barrels per day. United Arab Emirates pipeline can actually transport 1.5 million barrels per day. Between them, 8.5 million. Not quite 50% of what goes through the Strait of Hormuz, but close. Close enough that maybe us and what little bit we can trickle out of the Alaska pipeline and what else our other allies can produce, we can handle most of the needs of our allies in Japan and South Korea, potentially. You know, they would have to cut back, but it wouldn't see the country that would hurt the worst should we shut down the Alaska pipeline, not the Alaska pipeline, the the Strait of Hormuz would be China. This is why the United States might be the ones to shut down the Strait of Hormuz. It does not serve the interest of Iran to do that when they're biting the hand that feeds them. At least on the surface, it don't. Now, Iran doesn't get a lot of their funding from Russia. They get a lot of their nuclear, especially with not so much funding these days, but nuclear expertise, the ones that has been developing their nuclear weapons technology, probably, most likely helping them in that area, but principally the nuclear power plant technology. Russians have played a big role in developing the nuclear power plants in Iran. So actually, Russia would gain handsomely if the Strait of Hormuz was shut down, and Vladimir Putin would be happy with glee. But Vladimir Putin's also something of a client country now to China, since China's supplying so much to Russia that Vladimir Putin couldn't go way out of his way. So by and large, it more behooves Iran to keep that strait open than to close it. So, and again, they might partially close it, like I mentioned, using a Houthi-like operation to cherry pick and take out those ships that aren't Chinese or with some other country that they do not want to inhibit passing through the strait. However, the United States might close the strait entirely, but again, not likely that if the United States can maintain a naval presence, that is, if China doesn't use the technology we talked about earlier to take out our ships at sea. China has come up with technology they claim that would be able to, in short order, take out our entire naval fleet. I've talked about that in other videos. You have to hunt around for that kind of stuff. So not going to repeat it all here today. You got to watch some other videos, but we discussed what China claims will do that. And I've talked about similar things prior to that video, before they made that claim. All right, guys. So if our Navy is still operating, they might decide, instead of blocking the whole strait, to cherry pick, again, who goes in and out from our side, primarily stopping Chinese-related ships. You know, let the Indians pass, let South Korean, and if Iran don't take out South Korean and Japanese ships or oriented ships going through there, which they might likely do due to the alliances. Guys, the world is splitting right now. The whole world is dividing according to who's allied with who. So these conflicts are liable to reflect that. What is allowed by either side to pass is liable to reflect this split as we're going into a World War III, apparently. Let's hope somehow that can be averted. But essentially, we're already in World War III, but let's just hope the total effects can be averted. I don't know, guys. So, yeah, what you need to know again. Now, China does have stockpiles. We all know China's been stocking up oil. So you go, well, China's got enough to cover themselves. They ain't got anything to worry about. Well, China's got two kinds of stockpiles. One they call the stockpile, and the other they call the National Reserve. And somehow they keep these booked differently. I don't know what, why they do that and what difference it makes, because ultimately it all adds up, right? So China's rumored to have 10 million barrels in stockpile, and they're rumored to have 280 to 400 million in National Reserve. But their daily consumption is about 15 million barrels a day, like I said earlier. So when you do the math, and if they had 400 million barrels in total in reserve, so there's some margin there, so I'll just lump their stock in there because that's a big round number. Then at 15 million barrels per day, that only gives them 27 days of fuel at most. If they're, they are getting a little bit from Russia, but not enough to make up what they consume, what they need. So they got about 27 days at most in the reserves, total reserves. So yeah, if you look at it that way, China's imported an estimate of 2.1 million barrels per day of crude from Russia. So that just gives you an idea of what their shortages would be if they're using 15 million barrels. That's just not going to cover them. It might extend their reserve out a little bit, like a couple of weeks maybe, if they conserve and everything else. But basically, China is going to be in dire straits in a month and a half into a war where if the United States mainly takes the tactic of blockading China rather than fighting them directly or some combination thereof, China will be exhausted for fuel. We'll run out of ammo early, so it behooves the United States to stand back and just starve China off from fuel, stay out of that missile range that China has as much as they can, and hope the satellites and other assets I mentioned earlier that could be used to help take our carrier strike force groups and other ships out has not been put into effect yet. Anyway, if it could, or if it worked, I don't, there's a lot of uncertainty about all this stuff that pertains to how a war with China would go down, but it may come around sooner rather than later. So, what it boils down to is that with a consumption of 50 million barrels per day and Russia's supply 2.1 million barrels, China would have only 2.5 million. Well, they got some of their own production. So what they produce in China at about 0.4 million barrels per day, and what Russia produces 2.5 million barrels a day, which is only 16.7% of what China presently consumes. That's what I'm saying. They'll be in trouble. So the funny thing is that Iran has been actually supplying countries like China, Venezuela, and Syria with oil. Venezuela, why is China supplying, this is a whole nother aside, why is China supplying Venezuela with oil? In case you don't know, Venezuela has the world's largest proven reserves of petroleum. They should be the world's biggest oil-rich nation. But Venezuela being that cute little communist country, and communist countries just have all kinds of problems. Their domestic production has collapsed. I kid you not. They're sitting on the biggest oil reserves in the world, and they're starving to death. They're poor as all get out. They're pathetic. They have refining issues. And so, they just got all kind of problems in Venezuela, which is what you should expect in a communist country, guys. Jeez. The reason China's doing well is they've used communism with Chinese characteristics, which means they've tried to adopt a lot of the tenets of private enterprise, but their economy is too also on the verge of crashing. So even that don't work. I would say that China more resembles a governance form that starts with an F than with a C. I'm not talking about letters in the alphabet or grades you'll get on your report card. I'm talking something that was popular in Central Europe in the late 30s to up to the mid 40s, if you know what I'm talking about. Anyway, guys, so that's kind of the prospects on this stuff. We'll look at Fleet Tracker here in a minute, and we'll look at I'm going to show you the map of the Strait of Hormuz, so you'll know what we're talking about, and I'll kind of blow it out a little bit to talk about some of these other things. I'll show you where Iran actually has a small I didn't mention this. Iran does have a small oil terminal outside of the Strait of Hormuz. They knew that they might want to take it out, so they were trying to hedge their bets. They also knew that it was a very testy place, so they were trying to hedge their bets and develop one outside of that, but it does not produce much oil at all. Very little goes through there. It's called the Gore-Jax Oil Transfer Terminal or Oil Transfer Project, and it only produces, let's see if I can find the numbers on that. It's puny. It's puny. Oh, yeah. I thought I had it here. Anyway, it's not very much at all. So I will show you that terminal. It's, it's like, only a couple of 100 million barrels a day at most. I think it's less than that. It's nowhere near what goes through the strait. Thought I had that number here somewhere. Yeah. Got my eyes are going blind from looking in the lights here. Anyway, all right, we won't belabor that. It's very, very, very puny, very insignificant amount. I must have deleted it. Anyway, so all right, here it is. Initially, the project allowed export of 350,000 barrels per day. Yeah, they were aimed to do 1 million, but they never got there. So it's about initially, but I think it's actually less than that now, 350,000 barrels per day. Far, far less. It's just a fraction of what they could produce. Not enough to satisfy China by a long shot. And the other thing is, it's vulnerable. I'm going to show you all that here in a map in a minute. Let's go look at Naval Fleet Tracker at the moment just to see where things are, and also a word from my sponsor here. Ding, ding, ding. Guys, with all these energy questions going down and around, especially since the Iranian Revolutionary Guard General once said that he had several years ago sleeper cells poised to take out over 20 of our power substations. You might want to think about having some energy independence. A quick and dirty way is to get a system like this. They call them solar generators. Well, this might be, since it's got a solar panel going with it. I don't refer to these boxes as a generator. The generator is the panel itself. This does come with a panel and this energy storage and distribution box, which does not use the dangerous lithium-ion batteries. It uses lithium iron phosphate, battery technology, which is much safer. It lasts a lot longer. So, and so the price here you can get this at is $447 if you go to prepwithgreg.com. Prep with Greg. Go to Prep with Greg. And you can also get $50 off a 4-week supply of the long-term for 25-year storage food. And there's other deals you can find in here if you just come up here and click on this. But go Prep with Greg. Links below. Anyway, so I just want to show you that. And the naval tracker here. See, Dwight D. Eisenhower is heading. Now, this is from the 15th. It's heading down here. It's heading south toward, I guess, to book around over toward Iran. I think reach Iran from here. A lot of their assets can. And we got the Pat Forcewell, however you say that, one over here, right at close to the great. It's actually in the Gulf of Oman, right next to the Strait of Hormuz. So, and we've got our ships here all around the Mediterranean and offshore of China. We're trying to have our bases covered as well as we can. Stop the share there, and now we're going to go look at the world. We're going to look at the Strait of Hormuz directly. So, give me a second to pull this up. And yeah, I got to hit the right buttons here. Share screen. Pardon me, guys. I really don't have time to edit my videos like a lot of other channels do. And get too many irons on fire. So this is Gory. Gory, I believe that's a correct. It's got an EH on it, but I believe the correct pronunciation is Gory. I saw it wrote out that way. And this is the Jack's terminal. They've got pipelines that snake through Iran going all the way here. This gets them outside of the Strait of Hormuz. And this is the strait that about 21% of the world's energy goes through that strait right there. And I am going to have to move my little thing around, zoom in and out, just to give you a comparison. This is the strait the Houthis have got shut down. Of course, they're firing stuff going all up and down the Red Sea and through the Gulf of Aden. This is the Gulf of Aden. Gulf of Oman, and this is the Strait of Hormuz. Guys, I don't know how to pronounce that strait over there. That's got one of them funny Al Mabdeb, something like that. I don't know. So let's go in here and look at this strait because it's about. Measure. Problem with this strait is you gotta kind of book around and make a huge turn, and over a 90-degree turn. That's a sharp angle turn to get through here. So your ships are probably going to slow down a little bit to make that turn to come through here. And all through this passage, Iran's bristling with missiles all through here, all around here. They got a lot of missile batteries around all this entire area to be able to take out ships that they like to take out in here. And of course, we got, we'll have assets parked off here so that we could pick stuff out coming in and out ourselves if we so chose. So to give you a better idea, I'm going to have to close this down. Let me just so I can click on this. If you were to look, this is about the tightest point in the strait, be right across here. And it's about, I'll just show you guys. So that's 33.6 miles that way. I measured 30.5, I think, coming across here earlier. So it's a fairly narrow strait. It's a strait that, and the water is shallow through here too, by the way, guys. It's deep enough for tankers to get through, but it's not that deep. So this would be easy pickings if somebody wants to start taking ships out, and vice versa out here if you're parked out here. So this is what I'm talking about. Here is the terminal. We'll go in on this terminal. Load this up again. This is the Jax port here that I got my little pin put in. There it is. That's the Jax port right there. Now, what I had discovered looking through here is you can tell where a lot of these pipelines are. You can't tell in all cases, like when it goes into the Jax terminal, you don't really see the pipelines here on Google Earth, but there's other places you can see them. And basically, now that's some mountains there. So sometimes they look a lot like what you might see with mountain relief. So you have to be a little discerning to figure out really what they are. But I think I got it marked here one place. Maybe I didn't mark it. Let's go around here and see if I can find it. That may be a marker right there. I saw where a pipeline was crossing a river. That's not it. Maybe it's this river. You can see one pipe going across. But the rest of the river locations, I'm not seeing that. So what we got here is apparently they're burying a lot of the pipes where they go across the river. Maybe because they're worried about them being vulnerable to air attack. But here's the thing. The pipelines have paths that trace out. They don't all look like this. Some of them, it's just the absence of bushes around them. But the buried pipelines, oh yeah, the reason I marked this one is because it's got a gas compressor station here. That shows you that indeed this is a pipeline coming through here. Because they got a gas, you have to recompress the gas sometimes or let off natural gas, things like that. But the pipelines are buried through here. A lot of them are. That's just one of the signs of a buried pipeline. Of course, you find the gas compressor stations, they're not all labeled like that one. Okay, so I'm not going to find necessarily. Well, I think it's up here close to Gorey. I'll back off a little bit to find Gorey. There it is. Yeah, I think close to Gorey, you can see one of those pipes going across the river. Or a wash, maybe. So the area of Gorey is, yeah, there it is. That's what I marked. This area here is where a lot of their petroleum originates, at least what's going to Jax, because they do have that Gorey Jax pipeline. It goes from Gorey to Jax. Yeah, there it is. You can see the pipe crossing right there. That is not a highway bridge. See, there's no highway here, no rail line, but you see the structure crossing there. It's probably a pipeline or a pipeline bridge. There's what may be other pipelines, so I don't know why you're not seeing them. Of course, it could be a dam, but I'm expecting since it's tied in with this, it's probably pipeline. Anyway, I'm gonna stop the share yet. No, I'm not gonna stop the share yet. We're gonna look at China. Because China factors in this real big. China may take advantage of a war between Israel and Iran to make a move on Taiwan, or if they don't, North Korea may take advantage of that distraction to move on South Korea. If North Korea moves on South Korea, no, up here. If North Korea moves on South Korea, then you may see, then China may decide to take advantage of one. That's the island Hainan, where they have a big balloon launch facility I've shown you guys in the previous video. So that's Taiwan. Up here's the Koreas. But when you back off, most of the trade in the world goes to this little strait right here. And India's got quite a navy. and plans, if they get into it with China, to block Chinese ships right here, the Strait of Malacca, I believe is the name of it, Malacca Strait or something like that. I think that's the name. It's real narrow right through here. You can see the islands in here. Yeah, it's real narrow water passages. Just a couple of them that you can actually get through here. And they're very, very, very narrow. And that's probably why China's been building up so much assets here in the South China Sea, like the ones I've pinned here previously. And they don't hit another good pass unless they go around Australia and come down around way out of the way, which makes them also way vulnerable. So what the strategy of the United States, one of the strategies the United States naval forces have talked about, is basically using the first island chain coming through here to blockade China from getting egress outside. But that's also one of the reasons that China wants to take Taiwan, so they can break the first island chain and be able to militarily dominate this area and pass at free will. From that in the South China Sea, because they want to be able to get naval assets down here to the Strait of Malacca. And of course, if they got into it with that, they'd probably have some other strategy for dealing with India. They are putting some bases, naval bases out here in the Mideast and other regions here. Not that many, not like the United States has, but they will have some, which could play havoc on any attempt to blockade them in these areas. That's why the United States may choose just to block the Strait of Hormuz, because they may not be able to control all this around here for various and sundry reasons. The fog of war can get very testy. And also, as you know, no plan survives first contact with the enemy, so you better have plan B, plan C, plan D, if you really plan to win a war, especially when every war you've won has been through attrition, and you're fighting a country that's got far many more people and far greater production capacity. You better find their Achilles heel if you want to deal with that. And I'm not sure we have that managed, but that would be the hope should we get into a war with China, which I hope doesn't happen, actually, because war is terrible. Our world is in grave danger because of all the hatreds that have been fanned up around the world. I will cover that more in detail in the future. If you want to understand it better, search for my video in Nuke and Ever Pot. That explains it pretty well. I'm going to come back to this topic and talk about it in more depth. It deserves quite a bit of discussion on its own merit, but I still also believe in peace through strength. And right now we've let our guard down and we look weak, and war has broke out everywhere. That's a shame. We didn't have to be here. This didn't have to happen, but it's what's going down right now. So get ready, prepare yourselves, prepare your family, be ready for whatever may come. And I wish you the very best. With that, I'm going to say thank you for watching. Again, subscribe, bang that notification bell, and click all. There should be a video posted up here, or maybe I posted a few minutes earlier. Again, everyone, thank you for watching. Greg out.